Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're looking at a truly fascinating personal data log. Specifically, it's a week in review from a highly analytical person navigating a particularly chaotic week. We are going to unpack the core concept of maintaining personal systems when, frankly, everything seems to go wrong. Imagine trying to stick to your meticulously planned life when you're suddenly slammed by a severe heat wave, and to top it all off, you fall sick right in the middle of the week. How on earth do you keep the wheels on the bus?
It's a question we all got to face at some point, right? What happens to our perfectly planned routines when a heat wave hits and sickness strikes? Do your personal habits just completely break, or do they merely bend when life inevitably throws a curveball? The data we're diving into today is literally a masterclass in adapting to the unexpected. Instead of just throwing their hands up and quitting, the author used the disruption as a chance to gather data, adjust their targets, and keep moving forward. Okay, let's dive into this and see exactly how they pulled it off.
All right, let's kick things off with Part 1, the engine maintaining health and wellness.
Proactive health is absolutely our foundation, and when that foundation is tested by illness, tracking the data becomes crucial. Just think about this specific number, 7.1. Despite falling sick midweek and having a couple of days of totally sporadic rest, the author actually managed to clock an impressive 7.1 hours of average daily sleep. I mean, how do you maintain over 7 hours of sleep during a blistering heat wave while actively fighting off a bug? Well, it really comes down to observation and environmental control.
The data tells a really cool story here. The author noticed a massive difference in air circulation simply by tweaking their cooling setup. They compared running their standard ceiling fan against using a standing fan paired with the air conditioning. And guess what? They found out that the standing fan and AC combo created a much better breeze and dramatically improved the room's air circulation. It was such a simple pivot, but it actually made them wonder if their sleep quality had been heavily influenced by room temperature this whole time.
So, what's the pragmatic routine going forward? They mapped out a pretty strict protocol. Step 1, proceed with supplements. Step 2, tightly manage dinner times. And Step 3, adjust physical activities to protect that all-important circadian rhythm. Now, interestingly, during the illness, they had to temporarily hit pause on their supplements because of the medication they were taking, and this sparked a great analytical question. Do the supplements even help when the overall sleep schedule is already optimized? For now, they've decided to just keep them on standby, just in case that sleep quality starts drifting again. Moving on to physical activity, there's a noticeable dip. Last week, they hit 7,298 steps, but this week it dropped to 5,948. Now, their baseline minimum goal is normally 6,000 steps, but remember our theme here. The routine bends, it doesn't break. This drop was a totally realistic, intentional adjustment. The author had relapsed knee pain and muscle spasms on top of being sick, so instead of pushing through and causing more damage, they recalibrated. They aimed for a manageable 5,000 to 6,000 steps, gathering them through minor stuff like getting food, like gardening chores, and quick grocery runs.
I absolutely love this deadpan quote from their weekly review. Amidst noting that they were literally bedridden for a day due to sickness, plus dealing with inflammation and those muscle spasms, the author sums up their mental state with stoic as usual and well-rested. I mean, wow. They managed to keep the inflammation under control with some massaging and even noted it was an improvement from earlier in the year. Being bedridden didn't cause a panic, it was just treated as another data point to be handled with incredible calm.
So, what is the game plan for physical recovery? They've got a structured, step-by-step approach. They plan to adjust daily chores, slowly resume strength training to get that lost muscle back, and they're even looking into buying some new exercise equipment. But the really intriguing part is that they're contemplating swimming. They're hypothesizing that getting back in the pool might actually speed up muscle recovery without putting any unnecessary stress on their aching joints. It's a super calculated recovery strategy. Let's pivot over to diet and weight metrics for a second. The number 70.14 represents the author's average weight in kilograms for the week. Now, during the absolute peak of their sickness, they actually lost a significant amount of water weight, dropping all the way down to 69.60 kilograms. But because they stuck to their structured habits, they managed to bounce back and stabilize at this 70.14 average. It's remarkably consistent, especially when you consider the physical toll the illness took.
Tracking that weight was absolutely crucial this week because of a huge macro shift happening in the background. The author is actually in a deliberate transition phase right now, shifting from a 2-meal-a-day diet to a 3-meal-a-day diet. When you're making a structural change to your food intake like that, especially while you're fighting off a bug, keeping a really close eye on the scale ensures your body is adapting smoothly and not losing essential mass.
And here's how that food intake actually broke down. Their ideal target diet ratio is 2-to-1. So that's 2 parts plants, 2 parts protein, and 1 part carbs. Now, because they were sick, they were mostly eating whatever was available or whatever their significant other preferred. So you'd probably expect this ratio to just completely fall apart, right? But remarkably, by staying mindful and just avoiding junk food, the week ended up surprisingly balanced at an even 1-1-1 ratio. It's a slight deviation from the ideal, sure, but honestly, it's a massive win for consistency during a really tough week.
The final piece of the engine is mental wellness. When you are sick and in pain, sitting down for a long meditation session is just tough. So they adapted. They relied on super short sitting meditations, lasting just 1 to 3 minutes. They wove walking meditations seamlessly into their essential errands, and even practiced mental noting during everyday chores, like raking leaves. They didn't abandon their practice, they simply scaled it down to fit the reality of their week.
Which brings us to part 2, the destination, projects, hobbies, and growth.
Hobbies and personal projects provide such a crucial outlet for learning, plus a sense of accomplishment that goes way beyond just surviving the daily grind. And this person's landscape of projects is incredibly diverse. We've got coding, where they're dealing with Elixir and Erlang updates, gardening, focusing on seeds and front yard microclimates. There's fish keeping, which required some serious heatwave prep, and home improvement, which pivoted entirely to decluttering. It is a fantastic map of how a resilient routine keeps multiple plates spinning, even if they're spinning a little slower than usual.
Zooming in on the coding side of things, the author wasn't just doing some casual reading in bed. They actually resumed submitting pull requests to update continuous integration systems to support Elixir 1.0 and Erlang/OTP29 across a bunch of dependencies. They specifically noted some intriguing breakages they ran into caused by the Erlang upgrade. It really shows a meticulous, hands-on approach to open-source contribution that wasn't derailed just because they were feeling under the weather.
Over in the garden, they took a very similar experimental approach. They continued reflecting on past experiments with different plant species in the front yard, gaining some really valuable insights about how different microclimates operate literally right outside their front door. And now, they're comparing those insights against an upcoming plan to set up outdoor ponds in the backyard. So they're shifting their focus from soil right over to aquatic environments.
Which actually leads us right into the fish-keeping plan. The current heat wave was causing heavy evaporation in their tanks, meaning step 1 was a constant battle of backfilling water. But rather than just surviving the heat wave, they were already planning their next move, moving EPS foam boxes to the backyard balcony to actually set up those outdoor ponds. These ponds are going to house aquatic plants that need full sunlight, and it's going to let them explore breeding entirely different fish species.
Finally, let's talk about home improvement. Originally, the author had plans to replace some broken appliances and do some painting. Obviously, being bedridden and sick meant those bigger projects had to be put on the back burner. But the absolute standout takeaway here is how they substituted those big projects with micro-progress. They committed to decluttering just 1 item per day. 1 item! It's a tiny, tiny action, but it ensured the needle kept moving forward, maintaining that habit of improving their space.
And that brings us to the big takeaway for this explainer. Think about the resilience we've talked about today. When life interrupts your week, whether it's a heat wave, a sudden illness, or joint pain, does your routine completely break or does it bend? By tracking your data, making pragmatic adjustments, and focusing on micro-progress, you can maintain your trajectory no matter what life throws at you. So I'll leave you with this. How can you apply this kind of stoic adaptability to your own life today? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.